Welcome to Let's Run Fit with Be Lit, the podcast that fuels your running passion and helps you achieve your goals. I'm your host, Be Lit, and in today's episode, we're diving deep into race planning. Whether you have run 100 marathons or just starting to tackle your very first 5K, preparation is always key. So I'm going to cover all the things all the way from sign-up day to race day so you can be ready to go and covered. Whether you're chasing your personal best or aiming to just enjoy the experience, this episode will equip you with essential strategies and make sure that when it's race day, you're ready to go. So grab pen and paper and let's start. Hey runners, I'm so excited that you're here joining me on the 20th episode of the Let's Run Fit podcast. This is going to be so exciting. Today, I really wanted us to cover race planning because it is so incredibly important, and I have had a race go wrong because I wasn't prepared. So we're going to start at the very beginning today, and that is things to do as early as possible, meaning the day you sign up for race day. So whether you actually had to fill out paper to sign up or like 99% of most races, you do it online. These are things that you can do right away just by going to the course website. The very first thing is to always check the map and elevation. And I would almost say to even do that before you sign up, depending on what level of a runner you are, because that's going to tell you everything you need to know about how your training needs to be. Is it going to be a lot of elevation with lots of hills? Is it going to be a very flat course? Is it going to have a net downhill, net uphill? What are you going to have going on during that race so you can make sure that you are ready? For example, with my first marathon, I almost signed up for one that had over 1,000 feet of elevation, which is fine if you live somewhere where you can train that way. But in my case, in the very flat beach area of South Carolina, there is no hills for me to train on, and that would have been such a difficult race. So always check your map and elevation so you can make sure that you are planning your training around what you're doing. That's called that training specific. And that's what you need. You need to make sure that if you have hills, that you're training on hills. If you have a net downhill, that you are prepared to have your legs and your body do that. So that is the very, very first thing, is just the overall elevation. The next thing is going to be checking about the aid stations and water stations. Not all races are going to have these. So if you know that you're going to rely on some type of a water stop as your source of hydration, you need to know when those are so you can practice actually getting your water at those points in time on your long runs and your regular training. If it doesn't have a water stop, you need to know that so you can make sure you bring your own water with you. On longer races, this is also going to be important because that's going to tell you where bathrooms are, if there's going to be like a nutrition gel on the course or Gatorade and things like that are going to go for your fuel as well. So you can plan how much you need to bring with you versus what you're going to be using on the course. Now, this next tip is not always possible for everybody, but if possible, run the course, even if you don't do it all at one time. So for example, if it's your first marathon, don't go out and try to run all 26 miles together, but you can do it in segments, like I'm going to run this 3 miles and this 3 miles or 5 miles, or do my long run and do 10 miles here, whatever it is. But that way you really have a good idea of what you're going to have to face on the course before race day. It helps you kind of learn about the bumps, the turns, the twist, and everything else that might be happening on that course, and you can be prepared. It also helps you know where to go, because sometimes not all courses are very well laid out and with signage to tell you where to go. So then make sure that you know what you're doing because you've hit that course before. The next thing to do as soon as you sign up is go read the reviews. Unfortunately, not every race director is that great, and sometimes there are going to be things that come up. And now this isn't going to prevent every single mishap, because sometimes mistakes happen. Race directors are human. They might not order enough water or something could happen, but there are some races that are known for never having enough water on the course, especially for those who run in the back of the pack. There are also races that are known for cleaning up early. I mean, if you are a back of the pack runner and it's your first marathon, there's a chance you could get to the finish line and they're gone, even though you're still well within your available time frame. So these are very good things that you might want to kind of have a heads up on just for basic logistics. You also need to know this kind of information about weather. If you are going to travel somewhere for a race, learning about the reviews from the weather kind of helps you know what to expect, because if you have bad weather, that's very common. For example, I know a lot of races in like September, October can have bad weather situations. It helps you plan so you know what to bring and be hyper aware of your surroundings before you get there, whether it's really cold, hot, rainy, windy, whatever it is. The next thing to do as soon as you know you're going to run a race is figure out what you're going to wear. Now, you might say, well, why do I have to do this now? It's simply because you need to know how that outfit is going to work on race day. There's nothing new on race day. Everyone has heard that phrase, do not do anything new on race day. And buying an outfit is part of that. You need to have worn it ahead of time. And I would say this is for everything outside of racing. Like if you're going to go walk around Disney World or on a cruise or anything like that, that you're going to be wearing an outfit where you've got a lot of movement, you need to wear that outfit before you get there. What if it chafes? What if it rubs? What if it, starts to fall apart and like strings off on you? You want to do it before the big day so that way you know what to expect, because nothing is worse than getting some awful chafing on race day because you weren't expecting it. I have some sports bras that I can wear, but as I start to sweat, they almost tighten, and it's almost like I can't breathe because of it. So I know I can't wear those in runs during the summer or that are going to be really long distance. I have some that'll start to chafe after about 3 miles. Definitely don't want to wear that on a marathon day. I have a race pack that chafes me kind of right on the my sternum area from where the straps come down. And if I hadn't have worn that ahead of time, I would have put that into race day and had these huge bleeding spots on my stomach. Now I know what kind of sports bra or shirt I need to wear to kind of prevent that, and I don't get that chafing anymore. I found that out during training, not on race day, and that is so important. Anyone who is a big planner like myself, those very type A people, you automatically do this anyways. But for those of you who aren't and more of a wing it person, trust me when I say you need to figure out your transportation system before you get there. Are you going to be dropped off by a friend? Is it self-drive? Is it a point-to-point race where you have to figure out how to get back to your car? Are you going to be flying and having to figure out how to get to the race period? All of these logistics can be so important because it changes where you get dropped off at, where your car is going to be, how much walking you have ahead to the start line. Is there going to be a shuttle that you need to plan on if it's a point-to-point race? All of those kind of things that can be very difficult if you aren't prepared when you arrive. An additional tip for people who are flying, you need to make sure that everything you need on race day is on your carry-on bag and not in your checked bag. Let's not tempt fate, because I have seen so many stories on social media of people who did a destination race and the airport lost their luggage. And now they don't have their shoes, their socks, their outfit, whatever it is, and they're having to go buy new. And you're not supposed to do new on race day. So make sure you have all of those things in your carry-on so it is safe and you don't have to worry on race day. Because let's just be real, you put a lot of time into training for these races. You put a lot of money into training these races. And you just don't want to risk, showing up and not having your stuff simply because the airline made a mistake. So that was everything for before race day that you need to have planned out and ready. So let's cover race day itself. You are excited, your nerves might be kind of a little bit going, but you are ready to go. You are going to get there and be awesome. So let's prepare you for that. First, where's the race itself? How far away do you live, or the airport or whatever it is, to the race so you know what time to leave? I always say when it comes to day of race planning, you need to work backwards. You need to know what time you need to be at the start line versus when the race actually starts, because those are two different times. Do not show up at the start line as the gun goes off. That's a terrible plan. So if you need to be at the start line 10 minutes before the gun goes off, so now you can work backwards from there and be like, okay, so I need to make sure that I'm actually at the race, 15 minutes before that so I have time to go to the bathroom. And I live 20 minutes away, so you back up another 20 minutes. And I want to take 5 minutes to eat breakfast, so you go back another, 5 minutes. And I need this long to get ready itself, so you back up however long that is. So all the way back to when you need to set your alarm to wake up that morning. Beyond just how long it takes you to eat breakfast, you also need to pay attention to the timing to the race. Some races, especially like the marathon majors, you get there multiple hours before it's actually time to run. It can get a little crazy. So you might need to think about your original breakfast and other snacks leading up to the race, because if you wake up at, let's just say 4:30 and eat breakfast at 4:45, but your race doesn't start till 7 a.m., well, you've digested all that food and you need more food. You need to make sure that you also time your breakfast around your race as well, depending on what distance it is, to make sure that you are ready to go, because you also don't want to eat a heavy meal. only 20 minutes before your race start, but you don't want to eat it too early and then not have any fuel still in your body ready to go. So even if you have to spread your breakfast out, that can work. I know on a half marathon we had an hour and a half drive to get there in the morning. So I ate half of my breakfast at the house while I was getting ready so it can kind of start digesting. But I had more stuff in the car that I just kind of kept munching on those different carbs on the way up. So when I got to the start line for this half marathon, I was, not like full, but I was ready. And it wasn't heavy on my stomach because I'd already started the digestion process, and I knew I wasn't going to be hungry during that race and hit that wall. I've already mentioned that you needed to plan your outfit ahead of time, but I'm going to go through a little bit more of the gear and things that you need to have planned of what you're going to be wearing. So when it comes back to the outfit real quick, make sure that you got whatever is appropriate for the weather outside. If it's 30 degrees outside, you don't need to be wearing shorts and a tank top. You need to make sure that you have the correct clothing. And I mention this because please, please, please do not wear cotton. I have mentioned a few times on this podcast already, and if you know me personally, you know cotton is rotten. It is not the fabric of our lives anymore. We have textile technology that is so far beyond cotton. Cotton was the fabric of our life. But we grew up. It's better now. We don't need it because cotton gets so heavy that when it gets wet, it holds on to the moisture. It doesn't release it. It gets heavy. It gets scratchy. It causes chafing. And it's just not breathable at all, despite what all those commercials tell you. Do not wear anything cotton on race day. Find something else. It's going to be helpful. If you know it's going to be raining, please make sure you have something that is waterproof as an outer layer. Also make sure you have a way to have dry socks at the finish line. Trust me on that one. Made that mistake before. You just want to make sure that whatever you have with you is what you need for that race, because let's just be real. The weatherman, he might fail you. So you need to make sure that you are prepared with anything you might need clothing-wise. We all know that you need shoes on a race day, so make sure that you have shoes that fit you really well and that you have worn before. I have pairs of shoes that I wear just for racing, but I did train in them a few times before the first time they hit a race course to make sure that they fit good and that I didn't end up with a blister or anything like that. A good example could be essentially something that actually happened to me. I have a pair of shoes. They are designed for racing. They have a carbon plate. They're so light and they're comfortable and they're amazing. I wore them in 5Ks. I wore them in 10Ks. I was ready to go at my half marathon. I put those suckers on. I was like, let's do this. And I came out with bruised toes and a toenail that almost fell off. Because for some reason, at those further distances, me and my foot and that shoe did not work out. And if I had worn them on a long run, I would have learned this because I tested it on a long run afterwards. I was like, what the heck happened? And for some reason, after about 8 miles, those shoes just, for some reason, in my feet get in an argument and my toes get icky. So please make sure that you are paying attention to that. I have another pair that I trained in, I did my long run, and now I wear that pair of carbon plates during my races, and they're perfect. So you just, again, nothing new on race day. Make sure things are ready, and make sure that you have tested them, because not all shoes are made equally. If it is your very first 5K, you don't have to worry about this as much. But if you are someone who is racing for performance and time and you've done multiple races, you want to make sure you don't have a shoe that's going to be holding you back. Bib pickup is going to be something that is so important when it comes to a race, and every race does it differently. Some do not allow you to pick up your bibs on race day. Some force you to pick up your bibs on race day. Some, you can either pick it up before or after. Sometimes you have to make an appointment to pick up your bib. I've had that before. I was like, what the heck? Why do I have to make an appointment of when I'm going to show up to get my bib? I don't know when I'm going to get there. But that was one of those things. You need to make sure that you know how you're getting that bib. If you have to go up the day before, it's a destination race. Sometimes you have to go the day before. I have one out of Charleston that I love, but they don't do same day bib pickup. So I have to get there the night before, or I don't get my bib and I don't get to run no matter what happens. So make sure that you are ready with that and have it set up. Also, are you going to be using the safety pins that they provide, or do you have things like a bib board where it kind of doesn't actually puncture a hole in your clothing? Either one works. I can tell you with bib boards, I've never had an issue. They've never fallen off or anything like that. Honestly, I have a hard time getting them off by the time I get home sometimes. They're on there so tight that I'm prying them off. So let me tell you, those do, snap very, very well unless you started to damage them or you just got a bad pair. I have multiple pairs. They're great. They help because I don't like poking holes in my clothes. My last tips for you when it comes to gear is, Are you going to be wearing a watch or heart rate monitor? Make sure they're charged. Make sure you have anti-chafe. Is there anything that you need in your pocket or your bag that you might not think of? Just make sure you have everything together and plan. I would even have your playlist or your podcast list or book or whatever downloaded and ready so you don't have to think about your music the day of. Whatever it is, just have all those little tiny things prepared. The next thing, especially if you're doing a longer race, you need to check about bag check. I don't know of many races that are 10Ks or 5Ks that do a bag check, but a lot of half marathons do, not all of them, where they'll let you take a bag and check it so that way it's waiting for you at the finish line. Make sure that first off that is available to you, and then make sure that you have that bag packed because you have to drop that off pretty early. So you need to make sure that that is ready to go. What are you putting in it? What do you need? How do you get it checked? Does it have to be the bag they gave you? Does it have to just be a clear bag? What are the rules? Because you can't just give them anything because, race safety after Boston a couple years ago. Just make sure that you have all of that and you are ready to go, whether it's dry clothes, a snack, deodorant, smell good, something like that, because you're probably going to stink. Just whatever you need, have it in that bag check if bag check is available. So we're going to switch gears a little bit on our race day plan to our fueling plan. You need to make sure you have this prepared, whether you are doing a carb load, if your coach and nutrition or dietitianist wants you to, or whatever it is, and you need to make sure that that is planned. If you just decide to do a carb load, but you didn't have any of the things you need to have that planned, you're going to kind of end up in this messy situation. So make sure you got the juice or the pasta or whatever it is that you're using for your carb load or whatever your dietitian suggested you use so you can be ready there. You need to think about your morning breakfast. Do not wing breakfast the morning of a race because there are some things that you might not be able to run on. I can eat quesadillas all day. I ate a quesadilla before a run once and it was terrible. And I have no idea why, because I had done it before, but for some reason on faster speed work, me and a quesadilla don't work out. I can do an easy run on it, but that was one of those things. So if I had made a quesadilla for breakfast, I would have been screwed in that race. So you need to make sure that you know what you're eating for breakfast. Make sure they're simple carbs. You don't want them too complex either, because otherwise you're going to have a difficult time digesting. You need to know what you're going to have during your run. Are you going to have candy, gummies, juice, Gatorade, nutrition gels, any of those kind of things? You need to make sure you have those ready. Applesauce, anything that can digest easy, you need to have it ready. You don't need to be trying to go to the Walmart on the way to the race. For one, and I don't know about your town, but our Walmart isn't 24 hours anymore. It's annoying. I get it. Yay, COVID. But that wouldn't work. You need to have these things prepared ahead of time so you know what you're going to eat and you have it packed. You need to make sure you have enough. Not all people can react to the same amount of carbs during a race, so you need to make sure you have the amount that you need for your race and your body. Now, switching gears again, so this isn't going to be a physical thing, but a mental thing. Goals. You need to have goals for the race, and I've heard this from multiple sources, but I 100% agree. You need to have at least 3 of them. I know that the Roadrunners Club of America even tells you to tell your athletes to have 3 goals. You need to have one that's a slight reach, one that is very easily attainable, and one that can be attained even on a bad day. I can tell you, me personally, your 3rd goal or your C goal, depending on who you're talking to, needs to be that you just finished. That you completed the race and you came out of that day injury-free. Even if it's not that you finished, just I finished the day injury-free. That needs to be your C goal because that is something you can obtain no matter what. You need to have your B goal be, run around the same time as last time or run this much without stopping if that was your goal, whatever it is. And then your A goal or your reaching goal could be to hit that PR, to have that Boston BQ if you're close enough to it. I know that would be extremely reach for me. That would not even be the same alphabet, all of those kind of things for me with BQ. But for other people, that could be your A goal. You could be within 10 minutes of getting it. It could be, to run the entire thing without stopping. That is a big deal on some of these longer races. All of those kind of things are what you need to prepare for your goals. Now, another mental thing that I always suggest athletes prepare with is to go over all of the worst things that could possibly happen. And I know some of you might be thinking, OMG, that's going to cause me anxiety. Follow in here, okay? Go over all of the worst things that could happen. Write them down. And then come up with a plan of how to get through it. If the worst thing that could happen to you is you drop one of your nutrition gels. Well, the simple plan, make sure you pack extra. If the worst thing is my shoes come untied, well, make a plan for how you're going to stop and get it tied and get back going. That's, if you know what you're going to do, it's not a shock. Let's just say the worst thing is that you hit the wall that you weren't expecting. We'll talk about how you're going to get away from that wall and finish that race. If you already know what's going to happen if you cramp or whatever it is. So if you get a cramp that you weren't expecting, know that you need to, maybe hydrate or salt or something like that or stretch. And you can be like, okay, I know what I'm going to do. So if you have a plan before tragedy strikes, you're not going to be sitting here in a panic and freaking out. You're going to be like, okay, this stinks, but I have a plan. So I'm going to implement said plan. I'm going to get back to my race and I'm going to be okay. Beyond just having a plan for the worst, I always suggest to also have these mantras. A mantra can just be 1 to 4 words of just something positive that helps you get through. It could be, thinking about when your significant other told you how proud of you they were, or when your mom's like, I can't believe you're doing this, I'm so proud. It could be an athlete telling you how amazing you are. Whatever it is, just something to get you through. Tell yourself that you're amazing and that you've got this and you have trained for this, and just all of these kind of wonderful, happy, positive thoughts, and have a list so you know what they're going to be. Write them on your arm, whatever it is that it takes to remind yourself that you are freaking awesome and you can get through this race. Because when you get to that hard part, your brain is going to switch gears into telling you all the worst things and telling you all the reasons you can't do it. So you need to be prepared to tell yourself how much you can do it. Remind yourself that you've done the training and that you are prepared, and having a little mantra there can be all it takes to make sure that you've got this. Now, moving to a new thing. Race day, you get there, what do you do now? First thing, you need to make sure that you plan for the bathroom. Okay, especially longer races, you do not want to have to go potty in the middle of the race. And you got to get in these lines early. No matter how many porta potties they get, somehow there's never going to be enough. And nothing is more annoying than when you are in line for the bathroom, you're 5 minutes from the start, and someone in jeans or something like that is in front of you for the bathroom, okay? Random thing to people who don't race, if it's almost time for the start line, this is not the time for you to go to the bathroom. Wait until the race starts and then you go. Okay? Like, you're not about to run. You'll be okay. That's just a small etiquette thing that drives me nuts when I'm almost late for the start line because a million people who aren't racing are in line for the bathroom. All right? Like, no. So make sure you plan for the bathroom along the way. And if it's a longer race and you're going to have to go to the bathroom during the race, so for example, if you are like a 6-hour marathoner, you're going to have to go to the bathroom during the race more than likely. That's just, how life works. So you need to make sure you have this in your plan, because you don't want to end up at the finish line going, oh, well, if I hadn't spent 3 minutes in the bathroom, I would have done this. No, you have that already planned for, so you're ready to go. And you go before the start line because you do not want to be the person who is a mile in and is like, oh, dang it. And then you have to go to the bathroom. Because let me tell you, for some reason, the first porta potty on course always has a line. And it drives me nuts. They always have a line. I will never go to the first porta potty on course, which normally for one, I go to the bathroom before I start. So I'm as empty as possible anyways. But, you just got to be prepared for that and make sure it's in your plan. Speaking of race etiquette, if this is your first race, there are a lot of things about racing that no one tells you. So I'm going to be the one to tell you all the things that I have learned from my race days I didn't know about and I had zero clue about. And I ended up being that person to someone else when I first started racing because, these aren't things written down. So here we go. Corral lines. Sometimes they are assigned, on very much so on big races, but most of the time you kind of corral yourself. Please do this properly. If you know you're going to be running 10-minute miles, I'm sorry, a 10-minute mile is never going to be the pace that wins races, okay, from the marathon down at least. 10-minute milers, please, I love you, I'm one of you. Do not be touching that start line in terms of your toes actually on the line, okay? That is for people who are running like 6 minutes or less, sometimes less than that. Like, please don't do that. Plan to make sure that you are around people who run about the same pace you can, because nothing is worse than when you are trying to set a PR and you corral yourself properly and then someone in front of you is going at the pace of a snail because they didn't corral themselves right. Sorry, I'm pausing because this just makes me mad. I actually have a picture from a race that I did where someone put themselves within like the first 3 rows of people and started her race at a walk. And then sitting there laughing with her friends, I'm going to walk this entire race. And I'm trying to run it. And I ended up having to like get around her. And you can see in this picture, her giving me this nasty look from where I like essentially like had to like jolt around her really, really quickly because she was in the way. And if you look in this picture, you can see other people behind me also having to get around her because she was in the way. If you're going to be someone who's walking, go to the back. If you're going to be someone walking like a medium, moderate pace, go to the middle. If you know that you could possibly win the race, that's when you're going to be at the very front. I know that I would never be within like the first like 10 rows of people at a start line because I'm just not that pace. I'm not an elite runner. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So just kind of make sure you corral yourself properly so you're not being rude to those around you. The next biggest kind of etiquette thing is if you're going to slow down or you're going to pull over or you're going to switch to a walk, that's fine. You are amazing. You're still out there doing it, but please, please signal to people that you're going to do this. The universal signal is to just put your hand up for about 2 to 3 seconds and let people know. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to say what pace you're going to switch to. Just let the people behind you know that your pace is about to change. Because in a lot of races, especially near the beginning, you're very, very close to each other. You're kind of elbow to elbow. So if you just randomly stop to walk, the person behind you doesn't know that, and they're going to run right into you. And I've almost done it to someone. And then they got mad at me because I switched to a walk and gave no one any indication, even though there was like 5 people bumping into me. Like, you gotta let people know. You just put your hand up really quickly and try to get to the side. Do not just walk in the middle. Get over to the side the best you can. Kind of what I always kind of do when I know I need to take a walk break. I put my hand up as I'm trying to get off to the side so people know, like, that's what I'm doing. I'm not just trying to, like, get in the way. They know that I'm about to walk and I'm trying to get out of their way. And I promise people will love you for that. I've had so many people tell me thank you for doing that because this is just not a common thing in a lot of races anymore, even though it 100% should be, because that can get someone hurt. So make sure you signal with changes. You don't really have to do as much for speeding up because obviously the person behind you isn't going to be affected if you get further from them. But if you slow down, it affects the people behind you. So make sure you have that courtesy. My next small one is if you need to spit, please look. I have been spit on by a stranger because they just spit without looking and I was right there beside them. Like, just look. Okay, I'm going to just leave it at that because I could rant forever. I really wanted to punch that guy. I didn't. Probably should have. Technically assault. Don't spit on people. Pay attention before you spit on the ground. I know if you have to spit during a race, that's fine. It happens. Just be mindful of it. My next one, I'm going to try really hard not to rant here. But if you are running with a group of people, please be mindful of the course size. And even if it's a larger course, do not run in a straight horizontal line. Okay, I know you want to run with your friends. I know you want to talk to them and you're all equal and no one's supposed to be behind. But guess what? If you were running 5 people across and the race course only has enough room for 6 people, now you've made this little 1-person path for everyone to get through. Think about like being on like a big interstate, and if 3 of the 4 lanes are all matching pace with each other in the car, and then everyone trying to go faster has to go through that one lane, well, guess what? Now you've caused a traffic jam. Same thing happens in running. Okay, I have lost so many minutes of time trying to find the gap to get around a giant group of people, particularly this group of girls last March. Oh my gosh, sorry, I wanted to hit them so bad. I wanted to just like put my hands up like a little kind of thingy and just force them apart and part the seas because they literally took up the entire course. There wasn't even a single gap for me to get through. When I finally got around them, I had to go technically off the road into someone's yard because they were not understanding that there were people behind them and they were doing run walk, which is fine. If you need to run walk, you've heard me talk about it before. It is fantastic. Go you. I'm so proud of you for still getting out there. But if you're going to run walk, please, 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 do not block the path for everyone who's trying to continuous run behind you. Make sure that you're being courteous to others in the race because yes, you paid for this race and I get that, but so did everyone else there. So make sure that you're not being inconsiderate to everyone else. And if you're in a group of like 4 or 5 people, just kind of do like by 2s or, a 2 and a 3 or something like that. So that way you're not blocking the path for everyone else. and they can get around and continue to run their race while you run yours. My last rant of the day about course etiquette, because I feel like I'm ranting because these are things that very much get on my nerves, and they're the first things I will talk about after the race is all the people who didn't follow etiquette, because these are actual etiquettes. My last one. Do not be a boombox during a race. Have headphones or have your phone or whatever at a reasonable level, okay? I know that sounds very, I don't even know what it sounds like, but I know it probably sounds like you're just being a Karen. But you're not, okay? Don't be a boombox. No one else should be forced to listen to your music because, for one, they might not have the same taste in music as you. For two, this person might not be able to run to music as easily because it changes their pace. I know I can't run long races without it being a podcast or an audiobook because any music, I start matching my cadence to that beat. And if your music is super upbeat because that's what you like to run to, fantastic. But guess what? I can't do that. And I have actually ended up changing my pace because of someone's music to the point that it just drove me nuts. And I had to figure out how to get away from them because their phone was also so loud that no matter how loud my headphones were, I could not get their music turned out and even hear the book that was playing in my ears. It's just very, very rude. It changes people's heart rates because for one, they're probably annoyed at you because you're being rude, but it's changing their cadence and everything else. So just don't be rude because a lot of runners like myself, we run with open ear headphones so that way we can hear around us for safety, not so we can hear your music. So just keep it either at a reasonable level where you can hear it but no one else can, or for, easier purposes, wear headphones. They make open ear headphones so you can still hear if that's what you're worried about. Just don't be rude and just don't assume that everyone likes your music because I promise I probably don't. Now, there are so many more etiquette pieces that I can get into, but I'm kind of leaving it to the main ones that will really affect other people the most on this episode because I could do a whole episode about race etiquette. Okay, we could just keep going, but we're going to try to kind of focus because we're talking about race planning. But those etiquette pieces are part of your plan. Because if you're not planning for how to be courteous to those around you, you could have someone who's already having a bad day who loses it on you because their emotions are high and everything else. So just be courteous and have that as part of your plan. Know what to do when you need to slow down. Know what to do in terms of when to go buy headphones before your race and how you're going to line up if you're a group of people running together, whatever it is. My next tip is going to be about race splits. You need to know if you're going to do a positive, negative, or neutral split ahead of time because that's part of your race plan. Are you planning to go out faster at the beginning of the race than the end? Are you planning on going slower at the beginning of the race compared to the end? Are you trying to make it as even as possible? Whatever it is, what are you doing to make sure that your body is going to be able to hold the paces that your goal pace is throughout the entirety of the race? If you have a race that has a lot of hills at the beginning, you might want to have, that negative split where you really kind of take it easy on the hills and then once it flattens out, you take off and you finish that race strong. A case where you might need a, positive split, which I normally don't suggest that, would be if you have a very, hilly end. Go ahead and run a good pace and effort while you're on the flat ground and slow down on the hills at the end of the race. Whatever it is, there are cases for both. I'm a very pro-negative split person like most people are because almost every single world record was set with a negative split. Now, some of these negative splits might have just been seconds difference between the pace at the beginning to the end, but they're set with negative split. So I'm a very pro-negative split person. But I do understand there are times where positive split is, best. I understand that sometimes you need a neutral split where all of your lap miles are exactly the same, especially shorter races, things like that. It happens, but you need to know what your plan is ahead of time so you can have an amazing race and that your pacing plan is together. With your pacing, you also need to know, are you going to continuous run or run walk? Because that does change your paces. You'll run a little bit faster if you're doing a run walk compared to if you're trying to do a continuous run. What I mean by run faster, I don't mean total time faster. I mean your running segments, you would run a little bit faster if you're doing a run walk because you're going to have that walking recovery. While if you're continuous running, you'll slow it down just a little bit to make sure your effort stays, going all the way through. If you want more information about run walk and how to do it, just go back to episode 17. I have a whole episode about Jeff Galloway's run walk run. It is amazing. It can really change your day. I've done all of my half marathons with the exception of one in a run walk pattern, and it just makes me feel so good on race day, and that could be the secret for you if you're actually struggling. So get that, have that planned, practice your paces to make sure you know how you're going to do that. Another thing with paces, especially if you're doing a longer run, is there are pacers provided in a lot of races. Sometimes they're 15 minutes, sometimes they're 30-minute intervals, whatever it is. But if you know that you are going to want to aim, so let's just say for a 2 hour and 30-minute half marathon, you can go find the 2 hour and 30-minute half marathon pacer. And it's someone who can more than easily run that pace, who's going to run a pace that's going to get you to that time. Because like we've mentioned in so many episodes, runs are easier when you're together and you're with someone. So sometimes those pacers can really give you someone who you know is going to run the same goal as you that can get you across the finish line. But, there's a but. Not every pacer is built the same. Some pacers don't do what they're supposed to. Some pacers use it to get a free bib and then they just kind of disappear. I've heard stories of pacers who literally got a couple miles into a marathon. It's like, I'm feeling great, I'm going for it. And they took off, not going the pace that they were supposed to pace, leaving everyone who needed that pacer in the dust. Like, dude, it happens. I've heard a story of a pacer from hell who actually was a pacer with a friend of mine who was sitting there drinking. Like, when I say drinking, I mean actual handle of liquor in his hand, drinking the entire time, stopping to go to the bathroom for like 5 minutes at every bathroom stop, and would just run away to go take a picture and come back, and was so rude and just wanted, other people to say really weird things to him if he started to go too fast and he wasn't running the right pace. And she told me the story and I was like, how did you not punch this guy? Like, he was just a butt. Let's just say a butt. That's the word we're going to use to keep from having to mark the explicit button on this episode. But you just kind of need to know who they are. Talk to them ahead of time. You'll get the feel. Some of them might be doing run walk. Some could be doing, like a negative split or a positive split. You can talk to them ahead of time. They have little signs that they hold up. Sometimes they're small signs, sometimes they're big signs. But they have the signs. You can go talk to them, find out what their plan is, get a feel for their personality. Are they going to be the butthole, or are they going to be someone who's really positive and exciting? And they can really help you. And I can tell you, 99% of pacers, they are fantastic and they do an excellent job. Sometimes they're not. But even those who do an excellent job, they are still human. They will sometimes make a mistake and go too fast or go too slow or just have a bad day and not be able to keep the pace they're supposed to. It happens. They're humans, okay? Most of them aren't going to be leading you wrong on purpose, like the butthole guy that I just gave in an example. Most of them are going to do their best to get you to your goals. My biggest advice is to have a race plan for yourself. So if something bad does happen, whether it was a human having a bad day or somehow you just ended up with the pacer who was a butt, that you can survive on your own if needed. Now, my last race planning tip is going to be the end of the race. You finished, now what? And this is something you need to plan for. First off, keep moving until you fully cool down. I have had a half marathon. I ran it. I PR'd. I did great. And I stood there and talked to my husband until all of my muscles seized up. And when it was time to walk to the car, I was barely functional. Like, it was bad because I didn't let my body cool down. I was just going ham and then I stopped. So make sure that you stop, walk around, kind of keep your body moving until your heart rate comes down. It'll help you prevent possibly passing out or having other medical issues or getting dizzy or anything like that. Just kind of let your body cool down. You also need to make sure you have a plan for food and water at the end. You're going to need to rehydrate and refuel. Most races feed you. They don't always feed you what you want, though. For example, the Boston Marathon, they feed you some type of stew. I've never done Boston myself, but I've heard stories that it's like this beef stew situation, and that is the last thing I would want after a race. So I would have to bring my own food, and that's fine. I've had a half marathon that they feed you this delicious barbecue. I know it's delicious because I've gone to the restaurant on a day that I wasn't running, but after a race, that barbecue was the last thing that I wanted. So I bring my own snacks. They normally have bananas, but one banana isn't always enough depending on your race distance. So just make sure you have some type of ratio of carbs and protein. Your dietitian can kind of give you an idea of what your body needs personally. So talk to your dietitian or nutritionist. Kind of the general recommendations, normally like 3 grams of carbs to 1 gram of protein. But that's not for everyone. So check with your dietitian. They'll tell you what you need. That way you can make sure that you are ready to go. My last kind of end of the day tip: ice bath, massage, muscle scraping. Just focus on your recovering. Naps are part of your recovery. Do not plan to run a half marathon or a full marathon and then go to work at the end of the day. No. Plan to go sit on your couch and watch TV. You need to nap. You need to recover. You need to rest because you just put your body through something amazing that your body can do, but it worked really, really hard and you need to let it recover, and that will help you with soreness and everything else. And over the next couple of days, you need to keep moving. You're going to be sore, especially after a full marathon. You're going to be sore. Keep moving. It'll help get all that ickiness out sooner and you will be back to normal. To close this episode, just remember, you need a plan for every step of the way, all the way from the day you sign up to what to do the next day or so you know what to do and you can implement that plan and have the best race possible. It'll keep your race day running smoothly, make sure all of your brain power goes towards the race and nothing else, even something small. You'll be ready to go if you have a plan. So happy racing, and let me know how you do in your next race. Have a great day, guys. Thanks so much, runners, for spending time with me and listening to this episode. If you like what you heard, please hit that subscribe button and leave me a review. I always love to hear from my listeners. And if you want more Let's Run Fit in your life, find me on Instagram at Let's Run Fit with BLit. Until next time, runners. The information in this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for medical or professional advice. Please always consult a medical professional if you're seeking medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The Let's Run Fit podcast is not liable for risk or issues associated with using or acting upon the information in this podcast.